Welcome to the Metal Church. Bloody Roots. Reverend Ian Christie is about to begin. Bloody Roots. Please turn to page 666.
From the pages of Sound of the Beast, your weekly heavy metal history lesson with Ian Christie.
Hi, it's Ian Christie, and welcome to Roots, your weekly metal history lesson. Today, we go off the rails and onto the sticky tracks with Roots of Heavy Noise Rock. Abrasive, dissonant diatribes to come by Converge, Prong, Killdozer, Melvins, Unsane, Swans, Pig Destroyer, and here from their 1989 debut single, New York City's Architects of Decay, Helmet, Born Annoying. I'm Ian Christie. This is Roots on SiriusXM.
Talk about me. I follow you around.
Yeah, before the completely streamlined, polish, and slickly produced era of Helmet, there was the basement, the Lower East Side, the scuzzy, dissonant, trained in New York City art rock sound, put to the stellar precision drums of John Stanier, of course. Welcome to Roots of Heavy Noise Rock. I'm Ian Christie, been spending this season in blistering heat, can't concentrate anymore, can't deal with precision riffing, can't tackle the clean, clear tone of beautifully executed metal music. I'm just going into the basement next to the boiler, bashing it out in semi-darkness with a single light bulb with today's metal history lesson, looking at the phenomenon of heavy noise rock. The ultimate rebellion in music, rebelling against the idea of music itself, going back in the 1970s, even the early Kraftwerk albums, the beginnings in Germany with Einstürzende Neubauten and industrial clanking and clattering, the sounds of noise organized into some kind of barely recognizable pattern, usually expressing a very distraught, emotional inner state. Well, we're going to get into it today with bands familiar and unfamiliar. Bands very well known in the metal world like Converge and Pig Destroyer, and then heavily influential bands like Melvins, Swans, Killdozer. Even as we just heard Helmet, who went on to multi-platinum success in the 1990s, kind of coming out of a noise metal, noise rock roots. Well, we have tracks by Prong coming up in a couple minutes. Very similar story, rising out of the Lower East Side of New York City, where they were surrounded by bands like Swans, Sonic Youth, Live Skull, who applied the decay and the chaos around them to express something musically with dissonance, repetition, and tortured vocals that were about as far away as you can get from the streamlined metal singing of Bruce Dickinson and Rob Halford as you could possibly get. Tons and tons of chaos in today's show. Very little metal. I don't think a guitar solo to be found anywhere. However, extreme heaviness, and no denying that this patchy, sticky, tarry goo, this breed of intense, anguish kind of music has had a big influence on metal, I would say especially in the last 10, 15 years. I am Ian Christie, the author of Sound of the Beast, the complete headbanging history of heavy metal, and the publisher of Bazillion Points books. Specifically with today's show, you should check out the books Sub Pop USA and Touch and Go, both compiling reams and reams, hundreds and hundreds of pages, a decade in each book of the 1980s underground American independent music scene. Bands like the Butthole Surfers, Sonic Youth, Scratch Acid, big influences on the underground independent scene. Less or so in metal, but definitely you're looking at bands like Napalm Death, always taking a big chunk of what they've done, coming straight out of bands like Big Black, Sonic Youth, and Swans, going back to the very first records by Napalm Death. So let's check it out. A load of 80s tracks right now, a handful anyway. Something by Wisconsin's Killdozer, a band that sang about the inexpressible mundane evil of life in the American Midwest. Song about a guy who relishes his job at the bank for closing on desperate farmers. Coming up in a few minutes. Early track by the Melvins, something from the legendary Bullhead release. I mean, Melvins today, very well accepted in, familiar in the metal world, but, really came out of doing their very own thing, much more on the independent side of things than the metal side of things. Band out of Chicago called Rape Man from 1988. And you may think, wow, 1988 is a different year to have, accept a band name like that. Well, it wasn't accepted. It was Steve Albini's band in between Big Black and Shellac. Of course, Steve Albini, active in recording tons of metal bands in recent years. I have to think that the band name really had the resistance and the hatred and the offense that people took to the band name Rape Man had a lot to do with the band breaking up after only one excellent record, Two Nuns and a Pack Mule. Here's something from that in about 3 or 4 minutes. This is actually a Sub Pop Records release by New York City's Unsane. early track by them called Vandal X. Beautifully executed, room-scraping, early heavy noise rock here on Roots, your weekly metal history lesson. I'm Ian Christie. This is The Unsane Vandal X, only on Roots on SiriusXM.
Richard, and you can call me Dick. I've got a job to do. I work at the bank. I foreclose on delinquent loans. I am the one who can send shivers down the backs of innocent men. I have a job to do, and I do it well. Last week we took the farm of some deadbeat farmer. He killed off all of his cattle before we could auction them off. Let me tell you, that sort of thing really pisses me off. Well, I've been called Lucifer. Yes, I've been called Satan. But my name is Richard. And you can call me Dick. I got a job to do, and I do it well, all over this tri-state area.
From the pages of Sound of the Beast, your weekly heavy metal history lesson with Ian Christie. Liquid Metal!
Look up at the sun, turning 11,000 degrees, burning. No siren, no violin. It's a night of day, 93 million miles away. He's got a gun, pulled out from behind. 1,000 mistakes, triple six shots. He wants me out losing. 5-3 shells, 5-3 shells.
Yeah, man, prong in the early days. First couple of records, true crossover, not just of hardcore and thrash metal, but also of the industrial heavy noise scene happening around them in New York City. Drummer Ted Parsons coming from the legendary New York band The Swans. Love those early prong records, very different from what they did on their major label debut a year or two later. Welcome back to Roots. This is something different, but I think something that fits exactly right in the middle of what we're doing. It's been hot this season and just feel kind of shattered, fried, and completely like melted in the brain. And that's exactly where this beautiful noise rock comes in. Music too angry and hurt to get bent out of shape about tone and technique. This is some seriously scorched earth policy music. And I hope you're enjoying this week's metal history lesson. Yeah, we heard Unsane, Melvin's Killdozer Prong, representing the 1980s, moving into the 1990s. An independent record label called Amphetamine Reptile out of Minnesota started to really brand and specialize in playing these abrasive noise rock kind of bands. Helmet was on the label. Bands like Cows, Vertigo, Chokebore, and until joining forces with Relapse Records in the late 90s, these maniacs from Nashville, Tennessee, Today is the Day. And while in the 1990s you had tons of hyper-melodic Iron Maiden riffage starting to get into death metal, right? You know, you had bands like Dissection and At the Gates who were coming up from the music underground and then bringing like this super polished, well-trained, completely well thought out and well-founded approach to playing metal music. Well, on the other hand, you had these bands that were kind of outliers in the metal scene, like Today is the Day, or I would even add Neurosis into that. Playing metal shows, attracting metal fans, but really basically playing rock music pushed to a very abrasive, dissonant, kind of head-splitting extreme. And whereas so much metal music is about power, about attaining power, wielding power, being a powerful force, maximizing power, this noise rock is really about powerlessness. All of these songs about being crushed, flattened, hurt, wounded, deviant. Tracks that express that coming up by Converge, leaning in, doing something very much inspired by Touch and Go Records act Jesus Lizard, something by Texas's Cherubs, Pig Destroyer, leaning, slowing things down from their grindcore bass to do kind of a noise rock thing from the Terrifier record. And then two fresh examples from recent years by UK band Gold and by Microwaves. Check it out. I'm Ian Christie. This is Roots, your weekly metal history lesson, looking at the roots of heavy noise rock.
From the pages of Sound of the Beast, your heavy metal history lesson. Bloody Roots. Liquid Metal! lesson with Ian Christie. Bloody Roots. Liquid Metal!
Microwaves, brand new noise rock by that band affiliated with Justin Pearson of San Diego band The Locust, also known for his current band with Mike Patton and Dave Lombardo, Dead Cross. Pretty much bringing to a close a look at a breed of music that definitely has cohesive, recognizable forms. This kind of like sludgy, lurchy rhythms, the dissonance, the inexplicable pain and anguish expressed by the vocals, and falls outside of the metal family tree, but not too far. This is some rotten fruit that you can find on the periphery of the great metal forest, I guess. It's something that has always existed on the periphery. These bands have crossed over, appealed to metal fans, and I hope that today's selection of heavy noise rock tracks appealed to you in that way. The playlist is online at roots.bazillionpoints.com. And for further reading, like I said, check out the books Sub Pop USA or Touch and Go at bazillionpoints.com, home to a host of heavy reading, including Murder in the Front Row, Swedish Death Metal, Sound of the Beast, Metallion, and many, many others. The whole heritage of heavy metal is up for grabs, told by the people that made it happen. Leaving you with a recent track from just a couple years back by one of the most extreme purveyors of heavy noise rock ever, New York City's Swans. These guys got their start in the early 1980s playing extremely loud, punishing sets at a time when New York City really was a landscape of burning cars, vicious crime, and crumbling buildings. Things have changed with the Swans, but maybe not so much. This is a short radio edit of the song Oxygen. Thanks very much for being here with me for Roots of Heavy Noise Rock. I hope some of this sticks to your bones, inspiring you with its realism and honesty. Thanks a lot for being here. It's the Almighty Swans on Roots. I'll see you soon. Know your roots!
Christie's Bloody Roots, Liquid Metal's hour-long crash course in headbanger history. Hear it Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. And stream Bloody Roots on demand with your phone or at home on SiriusXM connected devices and speakers. Go to SiriusXM.com/listen at home to learn more.